Tips with Tony. Tips with Tony. All about nutrition from your favorite dietitian. Everything you need to digest in your mind. Tips with Tony. Tips with Tony. Making you healthier one bite at a time. With Tony. Woo.
Hello, and welcome to the Tips with Tony podcast. I'm Tony Marinucci, your registered dietitian, helping you get healthy one bite at a time. I'm very, very excited for this next guest on our podcast. I have virtually in front of me Nina Steinberg. She is a connection coach, life coach, everything coach. I'm super excited to learn from her. If you guys haven't caught on by now, I tend to bring on guests that I need help with so I can, help myself and also help you guys. So it's a selfish/selfless act. And I'm really excited about it. So Nina, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I am equally excited to be here. And I love that we can all learn and grow together at the same time.
Definitely. Awesome. Okay. So first question, 3-part question. Please introduce yourself by sharing who you are, what you do, and most importantly, why you do what you do.
Love that. So my name is Nina, and as Tony mentioned, I'm a certified life coach, and I focus on human connection. I work with women and men in their 20s and 30s who are looking to have quality relationships, and that includes all kinds of relationships. So romantic relationships, friendships, family, professional relationships, the whole gambit. And regardless of the primary types of relationships you're coming to work on, I'd say we show up as a whole. So typically it's all of the above. And most importantly, regardless of the type of relationship, we do a lot of work on the relationship with yourself. And that's fundamental for being able to have any other healthy type of relationship. So that's what I do, and why I do it would, I guess, dating back a few years now, maybe 10 years ago, I had a period in my life where my entire sense of connection was shattered. And within that, many of the most important relationships in my life fell apart. Family relationships, some of my closest friends, romantic relationship, my relationship with my religion, my relationship with myself, everything just all falling apart within a short period of time. And with that, I had this heartbreaking and beautiful journey to rebuild and re-find my happiness. And since then, I would say it was probably a 2-year journey where I was in the heart of it and been building since then. While I credit kind of that falling apart to some really unhealthy relationships and betrayals, I would also credit my deep sense of connection and my happiness and my success that I've experienced since then to having really quality relationships. And I'm really passionate about helping other people cultivate the same thing within their life and experience life that's built on quality relationships. And I've lived it through personal experience. Science has proven this, that healthy quality relationships are the key to both physical health, mental health, happiness, success in life. So really excited to chat more about that today.
Yeah, even just by you sharing, I already, you inspired me, and there's hope because I'm currently in my downfall. So what you just described was what you went through. You're looking at as a chance to rebuild. I think that's really important for the people listening because it feels very earth shattering when everything that you thought you had certainty around is no longer something you feel certain around. And it plays with your confidence. It plays with your emotions. It's hard to move forward because you don't have clarity on what that looks like because what used to work doesn't work anymore. And I feel this, even just hearing you say that, it's really, there's hope. And I'm really excited to get into this because for you guys listening, I don't know when I'm putting this out, but at some point, you're probably going to learn a little bit more about what I've been going through. And I have been in this place where I feel stuck and simultaneously losing connection, but then also building connections. And it's just a place where I'm reevaluating everything. So this could not come at the more perfect time. So Nina, thank you again. I'm so happy that you're here.
Thank you. And I will say to that, not only is there hope, But whatever you imagined before as the possibilities of like where that could go, seeing you in this period right now and knowing it's this period of total destruction and then rebuild, whatever possibilities there were before, they're greater now. Like you have the ability to put so much intention and work into building the life that you want. And that period that I had, yes, it was horrible. I will now say it is all the horrible things that happened to me are my favorite things that ever happened to me. I wouldn't trade them for anything. They were heartbreaking. They're difficult. They still are difficult, right? But they're my favorite things about myself because they allowed me this process of rebuilding. They allowed me this awareness that happiness is a choice. Building quality relationships is a lifetime of intention. And that's what got me to where I am. So I want all of that and more for you.
Thank you. Me too.
We're going to get it. We're going to start
on the struggle bus. So I appreciate that. No, but honestly, I mean, one thing that is for certain, and I'm sure you could probably speak to this, is like when you are going through your downfall, you do know who your people are. Like, and that's one thing that has like, it has, even though certain relationships were torn apart, or other relationships were freaking like stronger than ever. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and I wake up every day with like gratitude around that. And yeah, so like, I wonder, like, where does one start when they're trying to rebuild after it all kind of crumbling down?
Yeah. So I think even where you just started is such an important part, right? It's like taking inventory of your relationships and knowing the difference between one where you feel really held and supported and like you can be at your worst and you can be at your best in that. And what does it look like to prioritize a relationship like that? What about that relationship is beautiful? How can you make sure you're showing up that way and offering that to others? Like really sitting down and thinking about it. And another word I heard you say is gratitude, which is the most powerful relationship tool, life hack, everything. And the fact that you're even saying you wake up with gratitude at your lowest low is the coolest thing to even acknowledge and note, because sometimes gratitude feels like something we can't even access at our lowest lows, but to hear like you're already accessing that and it's your relationships that are allowing you to access that. That's so beautiful to just acknowledge that.
Yeah. Thank you. No, it's true. But you're not wrong. Like there was moments, like if you talked to me this time last year, I was struggling with a lot. And like, I like forgot to be grateful for the very basic things. Like, it's almost like I was like telling myself I should be grateful, at least I have a roof over my head or blah, blah, blah. But there was such like a negative energy behind it that it like almost like wasn't true gratitude, because I was so upset with what way things were going and so frustrated that it was like, it almost felt like a chore. Like I was trying to be grateful for things that I'm like, but I'm really mad because I didn't have a lot of things, you know?
You know what? Like pushing off that gratitude when it didn't feel natural is actually really healthy, because there's also toxic positivity, right? Which is where...
Yes, let's talk about this.
Yes. Like the world is shattering around you, but you're supposed to sit there and be grateful for the roof over your head, right? Like that does not create space for you to feel your emotions. And you wouldn't be in the place you're at 1 year later right now if you hadn't allowed yourself to access pure sadness, pure frustration. And by the way, frustration and anger and those emotions are actually, they're the catalyst for action and movement and momentum. So without accessing them, you would just be like stuck in phase one of whatever grief you were experiencing from all the changes in your life. And you wouldn't be starting to rebuild. So accessing that like ladder of emotions is such a healthy process of rebuilding. And we can't just live in a world of gratitude at all times. Knowing it's a tool available to help us when we're ready to like get up that ladder and start to invite some positive emotions in and take more action. It's a really powerful tool, but it shouldn't ever be one like forced upon you in the worst of moments.
Right. Oh, that's very helpful to hear. I'm sure very refreshing for people to hear as well, because we definitely live in like a toxic positivity environment. Honestly, maybe, I don't know if this is, you know, for so long, I think because I usually do show up as, just because when I am in my highest state, like when things are aligned for me, I am a very bubbly person. I am a very cheerful person. Like that's just like who I am in nature. But I was feeling so disconnected to that because I was really, I mean, really struggling. And so I almost like felt like I was not showing up authentic, and that was bothering me because that's important to me. And yeah, the reason why I'm sharing that is because like now that I've started to open up more on social media about what I have been going through, it's actually allowed me to connect with more people. And I think I was like trying so hard to be quote unquote perfect or to pretend like I had it all together when things were crumbling. And now that I'm being more honest about it, it's actually ironically like helping me connect with more people. And like, it almost feels like a giant relief because I don't want to be that person that like looks like that. Like, I don't want to be a liar. I don't want to be pretending. And also like nobody has it all together. And life is really hard sometimes. And I want people to know that. And now I like, since I like started opening up, I feel like a huge relief. Like I almost like can breathe again, you know?
Completely, totally. And I remember, like, I know the posts you're talking about because I know they caught my attention too. And for me, it was like such a breath of fresh air and relief as well. Just when you witness someone else stepping into their truth, especially in the world of social media where everyone is putting on a show and presenting their best self. Like, it's so inspiring when someone's just honest about what they're struggling with. And one of the core principles of connection is vulnerability. And what vulnerability means is speaking your truth when it's scary. So it's not just like saying the truth when it's easy. It's saying the truth when that leaves you terrified. And that invites such real, true connection. And even what you're sharing about like how different relationships have evolved for you at this time, like that's such a key part in that. When you speak your truth, you have the aligned friendships that stick around.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, like I said, like, I think if anybody listening to this, whether you're going through a tough time or maybe even you're not, I definitely think it's kind of like we do like, well, depending on the person, you might do like a hard inventory of your finances, or you might do like a review of, I don't know, month to month or your schedule or whatever. I think we need to like be evaluating our relationships with ourselves and others like on a more consistent basis. So I guess that leads me to my next question for you is kind of like, how does one start to kind of rebuild, or do you have any tools for the evaluating, you know, you mentioned like all different types of pillars, like where does one begin?
Yes. Okay. Love that. And I want to add on to a part of your question to help with the answer. So I think when we think of connection, and you touch on it a little bit, like people inventorying their finances. So when we think of connection, yes, it's made up of our relationships with other people. That's the obvious one, interpersonal relationships. You touched on another one, which is the relationship with yourself. But then it's also how you're relating to everything. So that can be how you're relating to your finances. Like how do you think of money? How do you think about time? How do you think about food, right? Like that's another one we can definitely touch on today. And so I just first want to, even when we enter this process of like inventorying and making sure we're nurturing our relationships, part of that is recognizing everything is a relationship, right? And putting the full bucket of things into that. And it's a continuous process. There's no one inventory, right? Like obviously, as we say, everything is a relationship. That makes it very overwhelming. But I would say in terms of where to start, like where is there the most pain at this moment? Like what are you relating to most that's causing the most pain that needs some nurturing? And I would also say on the flip side, what's like the source of joy and fulfillment, and making sure you're giving both of those attention. You're leaning into what's giving you strength. You're prioritizing what's lifting you up. You're making sure you're giving back to that so that it can keep giving to you. You know, you're really nurturing that. And then whatever is causing a lot of pain in your life, dragging you down, looking at that relationship too. So I would kind of do a big inventory, see where there's the most pain, see where there's the most gain, start with those two, do some nurturing and go from there. And then the big thing I would say when it comes to like another connection principle and how do we start to shift relationships is a big thing in my work with my clients is taking radical responsibility for your part in the relationship. And part of why I mentioned everything's a relationship, right, is because sometimes people really struggle this in relationships with other people because it's so easy to say, they're the problem, I'm going to wait for them to change. And this isn't to say you're the problem, you need to change, but it's just to say you're giving up your power if you're waiting for them to change because you have no say in making that happen.
So true. So true.
I had to interrupt this episode to tell you that Tips with Tony is now accepting insurance. If you have a nutrition goal and you were wanting to improve your health and wellness, but finances have been the thing holding you back, well, that is no longer a barrier. So email me, tipswithtony@gmail.com. Let me know that you're ready to work and you're ready for change and you want to do it. And if you want to do it through insurance, you want to make sure I take your insurance. I'm going to ask you these things. So if you want to just email me first, cool. But if you want to go ahead and be proactive, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to need from you. I'm going to need a picture front and back of your insurance card. I'm going to need to know what state you're from. I'm going to need to know your full name and your date of birth. I will check with the benefits company that I'm working with. They will let me know what's covered, how much is covered. For some people, 100% of their nutrition sessions have been covered. So we'll just go, we'll do a check, and hopefully that is how I'm going to be able to serve you best in 2024. But it does not hurt to ask. So if you're listening to this, this is a sign. Reach out, tipswithtony@gmail.com. Send me your insurance information, and let's see if we can work together. Okay, back to the episode.
Not to take like a hard left, but like as you were describing that, I was like just thinking about like, I feel like part of taking radical responsibility for yourself sometimes almost like admits to, it's not about the other person's problems, but maybe like why do you choose certain partners? You know what I mean? Like I definitely, and you know, I've had real love in my life, like genuine love that I can't really talk about yet. But it's like at the same time, I think there was always like a part of me that knew that I was choosing someone maybe based on potential. Right. And I guess like now, like coming out of this, like going forward, anything that I choose, it has to be what it is, like not what it could be, not what it would, you know. And it's really hard for someone like me because I love work. I love a hard challenge. I love like, you know, I want it, you know, and I also am a dreamer. Like it's why I'm an entrepreneur. Like, you know, I love like the thought of like working towards something and then having the fairy tale ending and blah, blah, blah. But like for whatever reason, myself can't just imagine it to be like not hard, I guess, or like, I don't know. So any tips for that, I guess, person who's really struggling where it's like maybe the person you're with really isn't great. Like maybe that's it, like, you know, but at the same time, it's not about them. It's about you. And so like, what's like tools or tips do you, I know that's probably a whole podcast in itself, but like, how do you help that person?
So I'm going to tell a little anecdote from a client who I worked with, and hopefully this will help. So, and it sounds like super similar perspective. So I'm assuming a lot of people are feeling this. So I had this client that it was so interesting. In one of our very first sessions, he said how he believes that like nothing good comes without like hard work. And he's a huge believer in like, if he wants something, he's willing to work so hard to get it. And then in our work about relationships, there was one session where he was just like totally frustrated and heartbroken that everything was so hard, that every relationship, friendships, romantic relationships felt like an uphill battle. And he was just like so sick of it, so tired of it. And I was like, let's talk about this thing you shared with me, this very first session that we had, that like anything worthwhile, you have to work hard for.
Yeah.
So when you set that belief for yourself, that if something isn't hard work, it is not worthwhile, all you will find is hard work. Wow. Things that seem easy, you will tell yourself are not worthwhile.
Wow.
We create what we believe.
Literally true.
We create
literally true. And not in everything.
Yeah.
And how you do one thing is how you do everything. But like even my business stuff that's been like, oh my God. Yes.
It's like, what would it look like if you had total belief that a relationship could be so easy, that work could be so easy? Like, what if you started calling in easy, that things that are worthwhile are the things that are the easiest and most natural? Like, what if that started to be a core belief? Imagine how everything flowing from there changes.
Yeah. Yeah, let's go on that. Like, because I talk about this a lot with nutrition stuff and mindset. But yeah, your belief systems dictate your thoughts, which dictate your actions, and we have to kind of break that cycle. So I guess like, and also maybe pairing this from what we shared earlier, that like sometimes to change your belief system, it almost feels like you're lying to yourself in the beginning. So do you have any tools or skills that you teach to help people really, I guess, start mentally like breaking down those barriers?
Yeah. I would say always the easiest tool that's available to you is just noticing and starting to inventory and journal and write down and notice. Because when you're making any of these big mindset shifts, the biggest part before you can even change it is noticing what's happening. So like, what are all the things that are feeling really hard? What are all the things that are feeling super easy that you're probably not even recognizing? You're not then dedicating time to because you just think it's so easy.
Right.
Just noticing the difference of those two things and see what insights come from there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What
I think like when you do that, you, like you said, like you'll just start behaving differently because you start like looking at things differently. And then it's true because it's like explain, like what your client described, like, I totally get that. It's like, we almost like wish for the hard work, but then it's so exhausting and it's literally driving us in the ground. It's like impossible to keep up or do anything at that pace.
100%. And I think just starting to change it at those little levels will change it at those larger scale of you knowing you can experience a relationship that feels easy. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean that relationships don't require work. Of course they do. But I promise you, natural relationships that don't feel like the hardest of work exist and you can have it.
Mm-hmm.
Promise that.
That's nice.
I love smiling. For everyone who can't see right now, Tony is smiling ear to ear because it's such a fun idea, right? Like they can exist, they do exist, and you can have it. And that's true for anyone listening.
Well, that would be nice. No, I'm sorry. I get it.
You will have that.
Okay, so I do want to make sure that we save time to talk about, I do believe, like you mentioned before, the relationship with yourself is probably like the biggest foundational one. And I find that a lot of people that, you know, I work with or even listen to this podcast, they tend to be caretakers and tend to be doers. And like, maybe there's a part of them that it does make them feel good, but really at the core, I feel like they're neglecting themselves and they're really not having those honest conversations with themselves. So I'm curious if I'm assuming you've seen that in your work and kind of maybe any tips for that person that's really struggling to cultivate, or more honestly, maybe not even that, like maybe just disconnected with self. I think because when your relationships around you, right? So for me, like my personal relationships with business, everything kind of crumbled. So then you almost lose yourself in that. And it's like, even though, yeah. So I guess just maybe speak to like, how does one repair that relationship with themselves?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay. So I think two things I heard, and you can let me know if both were intentional and I'll speak on each. So like, first I heard you describe caretakers and givers. And some of us in relationships are really comfortable giving and taking care of others. And kind of what you're wrapping that into is also that then you're neglecting yourself in the relationship.
Right.
And so a big thing for people who fall into that category is to practice receiving.
Yeah, that's hard.
Yeah, so hard. And I struggle with these things too. So, and that could be as simple as like receiving a compliment and like someone saying, you look great in that shirt, and you not having to reply, oh, really? Like, I don't think that color looks good on me. Just receiving it, saying, thanks so much. I really appreciate that. Or not feeling the need to immediately say, oh, I love your shirt too, to the other person. Like, practice just receiving. Like when people give to you, practice just not throwing up anything, just receiving all the love they're sending your way, or even the little slice of love they're sending your way, receiving it. So I would just say getting more and more comfortable with that will start to, as just like a little intro to how to shift from permanently being the caretaker and is allowing other people in a relationship to give to you. And then in the broader sense of how to start re-nurturing the connection with yourself, I'd say it's getting to know yourself and spending time just getting to understand you, understand why you do certain things that you do, understand what you truly desire without all of society's pressures and the pressures of people around you and everything that's clouding you. Get to know what you want for yourself, like really get to know yourself. And that's lifelong work, right? It's not done overnight. But I would say when we start to get to know ourselves, naturally love is built on top of that. And we might all think we know ourselves, but there's often a lot of things clouding.
Yeah. Well, like even as you're describing it, it's almost like you could know yourself, but like you said, like it's an ongoing thing because like I'm not who I was in my 20s. I'm in my 30s now, and I doubt I'm going to be the same in my 40s. And I would hope I'm not, right? Because then it's like you should be always be. I believe in like growth and evolution, and like knowing yourself is going to, I would assume, would be different at different stages. But that's the scary stuff, right? It's like, you know, and also like I feel like we do a really good job figuring out who we are, like quote unquote, I'm using air quotes, like in high school, in college, you know, like it's almost like, okay, you're going to go to middle school now, you're going to go to high school, you're going to go to college, you know, and then it's like, oh, you're a professional now. And then after that, I feel like it stops.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, and I think that's like the hard part is because you get so comfortable. Maybe you did know yourself at one point, but like you're not relating to those things anymore. Those things that used to bring you joy aren't bringing you joy anymore. And now you're kind of just like, now what?
Totally. And I love how what you touch on in that is all of the dangers of assumptions, right? Because something was one way before, we just get into this like default autopilot mode of it has to still be this way now. And we don't like re-question and re-ask. Yeah. And what I thought was really beautiful, actually, my sister-in-law has two beautiful daughters, and she is really big about not using any labels with them. Like, don't call her, just because she likes to dance, don't call her a dancer. Just because she says something, don't say, oh my God, you're so smart. Don't label her something. Let her decide who she is, because it is so dangerous. As soon as you attach a label, say someone is one thing, they'll hold on to that for 20 years and never question it again. Literally,
yes. And that's the hard part. Like, that's exactly it. Because and we've done that for years. Like, oh, I'm an athlete, or I'm a, you know, it's like, no, I play sports, but like, I don't need to label myself as I'm only an athlete. I know athletes deal with that a lot, especially when like at the end of their careers and stuff, where it's like, all they knew was football. And now they're like 30 years old and breaking down and they just can't do football anymore. And, you know, but it's like, now who am I? You know?
And to keep asking that weekly, now who am I?
Yeah. Wow. Oh my God, this is such a good episode. I'm so excited for me.
I'm like, we need to have 10 follow-up calls where I hear everything going on behind the scenes in your mind of how this.
Yeah, no, definitely. Definitely. Okay, well, anything else you think that the listeners need to know or you'd love to talk about or touch on?
Good question. I guess, is there anything from like, do we want to talk at all about, I mean, you're the expert in this. I am not by no means a dietitian, but is there anything we want to talk about, like food relationship?
Yeah. I mean, I talk about that stuff all the time.
That's your bread and butter.
But I'm curious, like, you know, maybe if there's anything that you do with clients that, you know, is similar or maybe different, and maybe I can learn from it.
Yeah. So I wouldn't say food is addressed by any means with every client, but what I would say is going back to that same fundamental principle of everything's a relationship, and that taking radical responsibility, it's almost easier with something like food because you don't expect food to change in the relationship. You have to change it.
Yeah, well, that's very true. Like, so one of the things I do teach is like, as I help people heal their relationship with food and their body and just be more mindful and more intentional, they now are more just self-aware of, like, very often I'll have people that, you know, gain this confidence in themselves and they change careers, or they go back to school, or they end a toxic relationship, or like they just stop settling for mediocrity, I guess, because they start to recognize that they have more power, they have more control, they have more, you know, they start to have a better sense of self. But it started with us just looking at their food and their relationship with food and their relationship with their body, and where are those stories coming from? And, you know, so it is really,
I love that. And I love how in all your work, you weave in the concepts of just how similar our relationship with food is to our dating relationships and our romance. And it's so true. And it goes both ways, right? Like we can learn about our human people relationships from our relationship with food, and we can learn about our relationship with food through human relationships. And on the flip side, it's like the same way you need to be mindful about what you eat, you need to be mindful about like who you're consuming, and you are the people you surround yourself with, and asking yourself like who's bringing you joy, who's making you feel sick after you see them, like who's inspiring you and uplifting you, and thinking about them so united is, I feel like, so important.
Definitely. That's such a great point. I'm glad that we touched on that for sure. I definitely think I'm going to have you back because I am going to incorporate a lot of what you shared. And I do want to come back and be able to speak more about what's been going on with me and I think you know what? I mean, I'm probably everybody listening is going to just go on the journey with me. Right.
Yeah.
You know, and because we're definitely rebranding at Tips with Tony, because Tips with Tony is me. Like, that's my business, right? It's me, but it's like, I don't know who I am anymore. So like, how does one continue to show up? But like, you guys are just going to explore it. And so we're going to have Nina back in the future because this has been very helpful. And I kind of want you to see what great work you do, because I already know that this is going to be like almost like a premonition for like better things to come.
And not wait to be back. And I just want to say your vulnerability is a gift. And it's also, when you're ready, your vulnerability is a gift. And the fact that you're gifting your audience with the ability to see you when you're down and go along that journey of asking those really tough questions. Who am I? What do I desire? What do I want? How do I want to build my life? Bringing people along in that journey and not just waiting for when you have the perfect polished answer to present to everyone. Like, we are so lucky to have that peek into your life. So that's really brave and beautiful of you. And in any way that I can be part of that, I'm so excited.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I'm so glad that we connected. I really enjoyed our conversation. Where can people follow up with you, connect with you, work with you? How do they get in touch?
Awesome. Yeah. So website is ninasteinberg.com, NINASTEINBERG.com. And Instagram is pretty much the same, just at Nina_Steinberg. And on my Instagram, I throw out a bunch of relationship tips, connection tips. My husband and I are also digital nomads. So if you follow along, you'll see our adventures around the world.
I feel like I've got glimpses of that, but I didn't really know. So like, that's often you do that then.
Yeah, I would say our structure is roughly around a third of the year in New York, a third of the year in Florida, and a third of the year traveling places abroad. So depending on when this comes out, next one's New Zealand.
Dream life. That's something I know that I do value, is a change of scenery. That I know for sure.
So let's have this next call with you somewhere tropical, who knows where.
And sunshine for sure. Yeah, for sure. Sunshine and Okay.
Yeah. Those are the two places. And I don't know how much of your audience is based in New York, but I do sometimes host connection-based events where the experience is tailored and designed to foster authentic connection. So if you follow along on my website or Instagram, you'll hear about those, and would love to have everyone. And you should come.
Let me know. I listen, right now I'm just participating in life. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just, if you invite me, I'll show up. I don't know. Can't commit to anything, but I'm going to show up. That's as much as I can do.
Love it. Yeah. That's your hour.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for being here, guys. Make sure you give her a follow. Work with her. I can tell she does great work. So definitely connect with her. And if you are not subscribed to the podcast, definitely hit that subscribe button. I don't know when a new episode's coming out, but it comes out sometimes. And when you're subscribed, you get notified. So thank you so much for being here. As always, I'm Tony Marinucci, your registered dietitian, helping you get healthy one bite at a time.